Well, it is with great pleasure today that we have back for year number 2, Paul. And Paul does a phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal performance of the Grinch.
Well,
And I'm
phenomenal.
And I'm just going to share a little bit of just what you told me this morning, if that's okay.
I was going to tell him what you
You want to do it? I'll
No,
let
that's
you.
fine. Well, that's fine. Go.
Okay, so I just want to share, last year Paul came in and performed, and Paul was having a battle with cancer at the time, and it was, I think at the time, questionable if we were going to see Paul again this year. And Marilyn has stayed in touch with him, and Paul came in with the best news ever today, that his cancer is, he is free of it.
All right! Very good.
I know for him that's got to be the best Christmas gift.
Absolutely.
And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, aka the Grinch.
The Grinch, yeah.
Everybody kind of keep that. Everybody.
That's fine. It's a pleasure to be back. And the cancer started as oral cancer, and all this is plastic. This isn't real at all. So they removed my palate. This is over a year ago, almost 2 years ago. And radiation and chemotherapy, and then they got it all controlled as of a year ago in the summer. And then they did a scan. They said everything here is fine, but it had gone to my lungs.
Ouch.
And so I was stage 4 when I met you last year.
Oh, good.
And he's right. Who knew whether I would be here today? But there's that new drug out called immunotherapy. And if anybody has cancer and you have a cancer that can be treated with that, by all means, take advantage of that. Because the person that discovered it, the people that discovered it, won the Nobel Peace Prize a couple of years ago, just because of that. It really signals the end to this cursed disease in our human history. So what a wonderful thing, and here I am. So I'm glad to be back again. I wanted to say something to you. I was curious. You talked about your mother and father wanting you to be truthful all the time. Not to contradict what they say, but it's very possible that Santa Claus is real. Now think of it, logically speaking, left brain, right? Not right, left brain. Logically speaking, if Santa was to actually fit down a chimney, he would have to change form, right? He'd have to become something other than a physical fat man, to fit down the chimney. And probably the most logical thing that he would become would be a spirit, a phantom of some kind, right? Every one of us knows that something happens. Something happens every year at this time, and we call it the Christmas spirit. The spirit of Christmas, Christmas spirit. Isn't it quite possible that describes that spirit that comes down the chimney in a very real way, enters every house? So your parents did not lie to you at all. There really is a Santa Claus.
Well, you know what, I can appreciate that, but I was getting them because
I know exactly.
They always taught us not to lie,
Zinging them
and they
right.
told us there was Santa Claus, and then I found out you're Santa Claus. We laughed about it to the day they died.
Of course.
Yeah, but no, it's still special.
And
I
I
just
love
thought
it.
I'd share it because I was sitting here and I got tickled when I thought about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a great memory you shared. And I love the story. Where's the young lady that told the story about hiding the bike from her child? That's another great one.
Mary.
We have at home. We have 6 kids and 10 grandchildren, and the oldest child, Joshua, who is now about almost ready to go off to college. When he was a little guy, we had one of these Christmas trees with a remote control, so you don't have to climb underneath there and plug it in every time. So I would keep that remote control in my pocket. And I'd say, Joshua, watch this, off. And I would, inside my pocket, I'd click the thing off, and the lights would go off on the tree. And I'd go, on, click it on, lights would come back on again. Whoa, it's a magical Christmas tree. I said, you try it. So he goes, on, off. He's I'm trying to keep up with him with the clicking. And do you know, here he is, a sophisticated junior in high school, that we finally told him just 2 years ago, what was going on, and he was crestfallen. He was, oh, really? He believed it right up until that point. So that's a part of the Christmas spirit too, I think, isn't it? That you know, the human heart has so many wide open capabilities, you know? Not everything can be proven by science, you know. Science only will determine if something is yes or no based on the rules that they set up for it, you know. Because they're all predetermined rules. What if something lies outside the realm of those rules? They can't prove it, so therefore it doesn't exist? I don't think so. Just that they can't prove it, you know. So how did the Grinch story start? The Grinch story started for us because my daughter, who is now 42 and has children of her own, any time of the year she would want me to read a story to her, and it could be August, and she'd run over to the bookcase and pull out How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and she'd bring it over and slap it on my lap and go, talk. So I'd have to read her the story of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And I would turn the page and she would say it out loud because she'd heard me do it. You know, she couldn't read at the time. She was only 2, and I have a tape of her little voice doing that. So we'd do that for several years. Then she got older and kind of got away from it. And then when she started having children, we renewed that little tradition. And so this has become sort of a thing with my grandchildren now, with Joshua, the oldest one I told you about, and her children as well. And her youngest one is Orrin, who's 3, going on 33, and he's very, very intelligent little guy. And every one of those kids can now, if I say a part of the story, they will finish the phrase for me. So it's really kind of a wonderful family tradition. And you know, the Grinch, I've told many pastors that you can use the story of the Grinch as a wonderful sermon at this time of the year, because of the story of the Grinch really is one of I'm going to say resurrection, because that's a different holiday that we celebrate in the church, certainly. But it's a real resurrection of the human spirit. When you think about who the Grinch was, and think about Whoville, which is the subject of everything that goes on in the story of the Grinch. And it really is a story of people that are excluded from society for one reason or another. They're different. Think about the Grinch himself. It's right in the story. It says it could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. So he's probably homeless, wearing shoes that he would find out on the street. You know, any shoe will do it when you're homeless, right? It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right, so he had some challenges mentally and emotionally, probably. That's another reason to be excluded from society, isn't it, right? And what color was he?
Green.
He's green. He's a different race than most of us. Oh my gosh. So there's racism right there in the story. So as a result of all those things, where did he have to live? Not in Whoville, where?
A cave.
In a cave. Just where? North of Whoville, right? He was pushed out of Whoville. He didn't quite fit in. And the story of the Grinch is not so much that he was a mean guy, but it's a story of the resurrection of the human spirit within the citizens of Whoville, who needed a Grinch in their life in order for them to be better people. And by the end, it's not the Grinch who's converted so much as it is they and their human hearts and welcoming who allow him to come and join them, because they get rid of their prejudice. And you're just like one of us, and they let him carve the roast beast, which is what they eat at the end. So the story goes, every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. This could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Who's, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town where he knew every who down in Whoville beneath was busy now, hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings. He snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow's Christmas, practically here. For tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early and they'd rush for their toys and then, oh, the noise. Oh, the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated, the noise, 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 noise. Then the Who's, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast and they'd feast and they'd feast, 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 feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast feast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. Then they did something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand and those Who's would start singing. And they'd sing and they'd sing and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. But how? Then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat. And he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. And he chuckled and clucked. What a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I look just like St. Nick. All I need is a reindeer, the Grinch looked around. But since reindeer are scarce, there were none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max. And he took some red thread and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. And he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Get out! Snarled the Grinch, and that sleigh started down toward the homes, where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark. Quiet snow filled the air. All their cell phones were quiet. All their windows were dark. Quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were all dreaming sweet dreams without care when he came to the first little house on the square. This is stop number one, the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he sprang to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. These stockings, he said, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present, pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn, and plums. He stuffed them in bags, and the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all those bags one by one up the chimbley with a B. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast feast. He cleaned off that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hat. He stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee, and now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. So the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove when he heard the small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter who'd got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking my Christmas tree? Why?" Does it sound like you? But you know, the old Grinch was so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie. He thought up a lie, and then he thought it up quick. "Why, my sweet little tot," the fake Santa Claus lied. "Well, there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side, so I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, and I'll bring it back here." And his fib fooled the child, and he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed that tree up. And the last thing he took was the log for their fire. On their walls, they left nothing but hooks and some wire, and the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was dawn. All the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze. But he packed up his sled, packed it up with the ribbons, the tassels, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Trumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Pooh, pooh to the Who's, he was grinchiously humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a moment or two, and then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, "Boo-hoo!" "Well, that's a noise," grinned the Grinch, "that I simply must hear." So he paused, and that Grinch put a hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. Why, this sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. Well, it couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. What he saw, and he shook, was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. Well, he hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through that bright morning light. He brought what the toys and the food for the feast, and he himself, that Grinch, carved the roast feast. That's it.
Ah!